Okay, so if we'll just kind of go around and have y'all introduce yourselves, say maybe where you're from originally, where did you go to undergrad, what year did you graduate from Baylor Law, and what is your practice area and where is it now? So Lauren, if you want to start.
Sure. I'm Lauren Spolda. I am originally from the Rio Grande Valley here in Texas. I went to A&M for undergrad, Texas A&M, class of 2007, whoop, and I graduated from Baylor Law in 2011. And currently, I am the first chair of felony trial prosecutor in the 430th District Court. So I do major level felonies and violent felonies.
Awesome. Okay, Ryan.
My name's Ryan Squires. I grew up in Waco, Texas. I went to the University of Texas at Austin for undergrad. Graduated Baylor Law School in 2004. I went to work at Scott Douglas in Mechanico after law school. I've been there ever since. And we are a group of trial attorneys that do various things. For me, I'm mainly doing commercial litigation, serious personal injury if it's the right case, and product defect type defense.
Awesome. Okay, Gracie.
My name's Gracie Wood Shepherd. I am originally from Austin, and I'm now in Austin after undergrad in law school. I also went to A&M for my undergrad, and I graduated from Baylor Law School just 2 years ago, so in 2018. I currently practice family law at a boutique small firm named Burt Turner. So we do a lot of family law litigation.
Great. Okay, Hannah.
Hi, I am Hannah Parks. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I went to Ole Miss for undergrad in Mississippi, and then I went to Baylor Law for law school. I graduated from Ole Miss in, let's see if I can remember, I think it was 2011, and graduated from Baylor Law School in the winter of 2014. And then immediately after law school, I went and did a year clerkship for Judge Cummings in Lubbock. And then from there, I came to Fort Worth and started working at Kelly Hart. I think I started there in 2015. So I've been there about 5 years now. And I've been in the labor and employment law section. And mostly we do employer side labor and employment cases. It's sort of a half and half transactional, half litigation.
Awesome. So kind of a variety of things spread throughout Texas.
That's right.
Did y'all go straight from undergrad to law school? And if any of y'all didn't, can you talk about maybe what you did in between undergrad and law school? So did any of y'all not go straight?
I didn't go straight. I took the LSAT my senior year of Texas A&M. I got a decent score, but I really wasn't sure if I wanted to go to law school, and it was a major financial investment. So I decided to take a year off, and I actually was a permanent sub at a elementary school in the Rio Grande Valley in Mercedes, Texas, which is one of the poorest communities in the state. And just being around those kids a couple months, I was thinking maybe I'd take my certification exam and become a teacher. But when I really started thinking about it and seeing how I could impact the lives of these kids, I figured out law school would probably be a better way for me to affect the community that I lived in. So I decided to go to law school after a year off.
Awesome. Any of the rest of you guys take time off?
I took about a year and a half off. I graduated from the University of Texas in the 1999, and I don't believe I started Baylor Law School to 2001. And I took a year and a half off really for no other reason than I'm not sure I was ready to go straight from undergrad right into the grind of law school. I went out to California, got a job, and at the end of the day, I think it helped because when you do that, you're sort of in that work mentality and hours and everything like that. And so when you go into law school, instead of looking at it as having a class for an hour or two a few times a day, you look at it more like a job, and you can be in that mindset to spend a couple extra hours in the library during the time that you'd already be working if you had that job. And so at the end of the day, I think it was beneficial. But I'm glad I did it.
Great. Okay, so for those of y'all that have been out for a while, and a couple of you already touched on this a little bit, but can you tell me about your path to where you are currently in your career? Yeah, so I think those of y'all that have been out for a while didn't necessarily land at your current job, except for you, Ryan, straight out of law school. But even if you're at the same place, you didn't land in the same job. So if y'all want to kind of talk about the winding path to where you are in your career right now. Whoever wants to go first.
So I had I guess a little weird path to where I am now. When I was in law school, especially during my third year, I was an extern at Neiman Howell in the family law section with Ben Selman. Was really interested in family law, loved it, thought that's what I was going to do. And then when I got out, the economy was still pretty bad from the 2008 crash. So nobody was getting hired anywhere. So I decided to come home, and I actually got the first job I could get because I was concerned with paying my loans back was a public defender job. And I had never thought I would end up doing criminal law. And within the first few months there, I loved criminal, but I figured out pretty quickly that maybe defending criminals was not my dream job. So I ended up getting picked up by the Hidalgo County DA's office shortly after that, maybe like a year in. And I've been here ever since, started a misdemeanor, worked my way up to felonies and felony trial litigation, especially like capital felonies, death cases. Those are what I love to do. And being from Baylor, trial is what we practice. So it's great. But it's been a weird path. It's not where I thought I would end up.
Cool. Any of the rest of y'all have a winding path? And I would ask if you're not, you can mute your mic. We're getting some feedback.
I did not have a winding path. I got a clerkship at Scott Douglas and McConaughey my second year in law school. My choices after graduation were to go to Scott Douglas, go to Dallas for a bigger firm, or go to East Texas for a very sophisticated plaintiff shop in a very small town. And I chose Austin, and Scott Douglas just has very, very little turnover. And after about 4.5 years, I made partner there, and I've been there ever since. And we just have very few people leave, and I've been there ever since and love everybody I work with.
I did kind of have a winding path to where I am at Kelly Hart doing labor and employment law. I started out in law school. I love trial work. I thought I was probably going to go and do something where I was in the courtroom a lot. I sort of thought I might end up in criminal law. I really liked the courtroom. My dad is actually a criminal prosecutor. And so I sort of saw myself going that route. But then I did my clerkship with Judge Cummings, and we saw a lot of labor and employment cases in my clerkship just because the nature of labor and employment cases is heavily federal. So I did a lot of those cases, and it kind of just ended up, I was dating my now husband at the time, and he was already in Fort Worth. So I knew I wanted to end up in Fort Worth. Kelly Hart is kind of the best firm in Fort Worth. I knew I wanted to be at Kelly Hart, and their opening at that time ended up being in the labor and employment section, and that actually lined up with what I had liked doing for Judge Cummings. So I kind of just landed where I am now, but it ended up being perfect. I love it. I would never want to, do any other kind of law now.
Okay, so we're going to transition to talking a little bit about Baylor law now, because a lot of these students, as they're thinking about things, are trying to figure out, what school to go to. So if y'all can think back, do you remember why you chose Baylor law? And then can you maybe tell me your favorite thing about Baylor law? So Gracie, we'll start with you.
So I think I chose Baylor Law because of the litigation aspect. I had interned, as much as you can as an undergrad at different firms, and knew that I found the courtroom piece interesting. So I think that's why, obviously the practice court program and everything is why I ended up choosing it. I think I like Baylor because of the small size. It has its pros and cons, but generally speaking, I mean, I'm only 2 years out and I get a lot of referrals from my classmates because you know everybody in the school. And so I don't think other friends of mine that went to other law schools didn't have that experience, but at, you know, my 2L year, I probably knew the name of 85% of the students. So it was a good experience to, you know, leave that, go to practice, and the legal community is a small world. So.
Anybody else want to comment on this? Ryan, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. So the question was, why did you choose Baylor?
Yeah, why did you choose Baylor, and or what was your favorite thing about Baylor?
I chose Baylor because I had some insight into Baylor. I had my father went to Baylor Law School. I had an uncle that went to Baylor Law School. And after graduating, my father practiced in Waco, and so he stayed in contact with Baylor Law School. So growing up, I had probably more insight than maybe others that weren't as familiar with Baylor Law School just as a kid. And so when it came time for me to choose a law school, I had somebody who had been there and done that in my family telling me the virtues of it and the benefits of it. And all of it turned out to be true. I ended up going there, and I totally agree with what Gracie said, which is, you know everybody there. You're prepared to practice almost immediately. Not 100%, but pretty darn close. And it was just a great experience. And the practice court program is unlike anything else any other school has, and it's sort of the crown jewel, if I had to guess, of Baylor Law School. And it's really, it's why kids go there. It's also maybe why kids don't. I mean, it's a tough third year for a law school, and you got to be ready for that. But the rewards are certainly there if you can do it.
Lauren or Hannah, y'all have anything to add?
I guess my main draw for Baylor Law is along the same lines as Gracie and Ryan. I like the size of the school. I'm a person that had figured out during undergrad that I tend to do better at schools that weren't in big cities. That was probably why I didn't follow the family tradition to go to UT. Big cities just have a lot of anxiety in them. I liked that it was small, and it was kind of for me between Tech and Baylor. And when I went to go visit the schools, Baylor just blew me out of the water. The sense of the community there was just hands down the best at any law school that I visited. And honestly, that's my favorite thing about Baylor is the friends that I made there. I'm still in contact with my practice court partner, my best friends from law school. Even though we're all across the state, we still stay in contact. And the professors and the administrators at Baylor Law, even though I graduated in 2011, I still talk to a lot of them on a regular basis. And I don't feel you get that at every single law school.
So
I'll add in, I echo what everybody said. I was drawn to Baylor, the smaller class sizes. I knew it had a great reputation, especially because early on, I thought I would end up doing something litigation heavy. I was drawn to the practice court program and the way it prepares you. But to be honest, my deciding factor in choosing Baylor was scholarship. I had the most scholarship offers at Baylor, so it was the best school I got into with the lowest price tag, and that's what made the decision for me. And in hindsight, I think that was a great choice for me. It's paid off for me in the long run.
Awesome. Okay, my next I'm going to offer 2 questions, and y'all can pick which one you want to answer. Do you remember how you found your summer internship or first job? That's question 1. Question 2, were you involved with any extracurriculars while you're at Baylor Law, and have they impacted your life in any way now? So we'll kind of go back the other way. So if Hannah, you want to start.
To be honest, I really do not remember how I found my first summer internship. I did not do the typical big law path as far as I didn't clerk at Kelly Hart and then end up at Kelly Hart. So I think I clerked for a criminal law court my first year because I thought that's what I was going to be interested in. And I don't recall if I applied for that through Baylor or if I applied for that directly with the court. It was in Dallas. But I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Were you involved with any organizations while you're at Baylor Law, and if they had any impact on your life now?
Yes. Okay. So I was in, I did moot court and mock trial. I thought they were great. I loved those programs. I really enjoyed them. I do think that they prepared me to be in the courtroom, just kind of that extra step on top of practice court. I just had more experience through those programs. To be honest, probably of everybody on the call, I probably am in the courtroom the least because I work, at a larger firm where we don't get in the courtroom as much. And I work on, heavily federal docket, which just doesn't get in front of the judges much. We brief most things. But I will say when I am in the courtroom, I do feel more prepared because I had those programs and because I had practice court.
Great. Okay, Gracie?
So I have a little bit of a non-traditional way of getting my job. It's pretty rare, but I actually worked for the firm that I'm at now the summer of my 1L year. So I got it during on-campus interviews. The second summer I worked for them half of the summer, a big firm in Dallas half the summer, and quickly found out that family law is probably the only thing that interests me. So I've been with them ever since. So I got pretty lucky. My firm only came and interviewed at Baylor because they wanted someone who was ready to go in the courtroom because that's all family law is pretty much. So in law school, I was involved in all sorts of things. I was on law review. I was the president of SBA for a couple terms. I ran adoption day 1 year. I did pretty much all of the activities you can do at Baylor. And I think the thing I got out of it most is, again, the relationships with the students and the professors. And I wanted to stay plugged in with all of that. And I know students 2 years ahead of me or 2 years behind me because of some of those roles, and probably wouldn't have met those people otherwise.
Great. Okay, Ryan?
So the first question is, how did I end up with my job? And it was sort of traditional in some sense. And in some ways not traditional. I did not know of Scott Douglas and McConaughey. They're a very sophisticated firm with very good lawyers, but small in terms of they don't have numerous offices in numerous cities. And so a lot of times in law school, you hear about the big firms and the real big firms. You don't necessarily hear about all of the more boutique firms as you're getting ready for the interview process. I heard about Scott Douglas and McConaughey, honestly, from a good friend of mine whose father worked there. And this was before I even went to law school. And what struck me about that conversation with my friend was that he described his dad as being very happy where he practiced law, and that all of the people that he practiced with were very happy in what they were doing. And that stayed with me throughout my first 2 years of law school. And that second summer, I actually reached back out to that friend and asked him, what was the name of that law firm where you said, everybody was happy in what they were doing, and the type of legal work was as sophisticated as you could find. And he said Scott Douglas and McConaughey. And I went into the recruiting office at Baylor Law School, and Scott Douglas did not have at that time, they did not have a on-campus interview process, but they had sort of a resume submission process. And so I gave my resume through that submission process to the firm, went down there for interviews, ended up with a second-year clerkship, and then accepted the job after that. So I'm happy I had that conversation with my friend, or else I may have missed out. As far as extracurriculars at Baylor, I was on the law review. I was on the national trial competition mock trial team. All of those I thought were very valuable. I think I probably had more fun on the mock trial team than with the law review, but at the end of the day, I think the law review helped me the most, because as a finance major coming out of the University of Texas, I did not write a bunch in undergrad, and I would probably describe my writing at that time as not that great. And I think what you find out in law school, and certainly in practice, is that almost seems like 80% of what you do is right. And the more you write, the better you get. And now I feel like I'm a much better writer, probably all starting with the writing exercises with law review and the citation exercises that you're required to do. And so I thought it was very beneficial to get that experience with writing.
Okay, Lauren.
So I actually got my first summer internship through the career services office at Baylor. They came in clutch for me because I had privately lined up an internship with a new judge in the area that I was from, and I was planning to go home that summer and clerk with him. And that fell through at the last minute, and I was panicking, and I was like, I can't not do anything this first summer. And this was like in mid-April, so we were getting ready to finish our quarter. I was in a panic, and the career services office came through, and they were like, hey, well, if you don't mind staying in Waco, there's a position open with Judge Struther, Judge Ralph Struther in the 19th District Court. He needs an intern for the summer. And so they hooked me up with that, and I really enjoyed working in his court and working with him. It's a mixed jurisdiction court, so I got to see family law, criminal law, some civil litigation. It was a great experience, and they really came through for me that summer. I was involved in diversity in law, Phi Alpha Delta, and I was on the ABA client counseling team when I was at Baylor. And the most helpful of all those is definitely the client counseling. Once you get into practice, if you work with individuals on a daily basis that you're representing, whether it be, in my case, a victim of a crime, or in my prior job, a defendant in a criminal action, those counseling like therapist skills were so important to learn at the competition level at law school, because once I started practicing, part of being a lawyer, especially in this area of the law, is you really do kind of have to act as a therapist, counselor, friend sometimes. And that just really, really prepared me. And that was one of the more difficult things I saw people without that background struggle with once they came out of law school.
Okay. How did y'all manage, if you can think back, work-life balance in law school, particularly if you had a significant other or spouse or kids while you're in law school? And actually, that'll be kind of our transition question into talking about practice. How do you balance your time with your family or other community or other commitments now? Ryan, if you want to start.
Sure. Work-life balance in law school can be challenging because, you know, in the workforce, you're generally at the office from the morning until the late afternoon, early evening, and then you're home. And if you've got a significant other or kids, then that's your time with them. Law school can be challenging because a lot of your nights are spent working to prepare for the next day. And so you've got to find a way to do it all. I did not have a significant other for most of my law school career. I did for the last year. And you just have to be a team, and they've got to support you and just understand that it's going to be a stressful few years, and then hopefully it's all worth it in the end. But I'm not sure I have any tricks other than I do think treating it as a job helps, because if you go and just say, okay, I'm going to be at the law school from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, then you probably have time to get what you need done for that day. Not always, especially when practice court comes around and you've got a lot of cases to read. But to me, treating it like a job and not wasting that, any downtime during the day is the way to free up your evenings if you need to.
Okay, Hannah?
I had some significant others during law school. I was not married during law school. As far as work-life balance, I'll be honest, I did not have work-life balance during law school. I mean, the best thing, and I actually, just background on me, I am married now, and I actually just had a baby and just returned to work from maternity leave. The best advice someone gave me, more towards returning from maternity leave, but I think it applies here too, is that you just have to look at life and realize that your life is going to come and go in seasons. There's going to be seasons of life where it is all about work. It's all about law school, or it's all about work. And then there's going to be seasons of life when maybe you get married or you have a new baby and you try to focus a little more on that, and maybe you're not at the office or at the law school until 9 or 10 every night. When I was in law school, that season was all about law school. That was my number one priority. My relationships with other people were not my priorities at that time. But I think, once I left law school, I actually found it easier to work than to be in law school, because when you leave the office, to some extent, not all the time, but to some extent, you can leave work at work. Now I think I have better work-life balance. I think that's different for everybody, but I think you choose the ways that you can make it work. For me, at least prior to having a baby, I would, try to get to work somewhere around 8:30. I personally choose usually to work through lunch. Sometimes I'll go out to lunch, but I would rather bill that hour at lunch and leave a little earlier in the evening and be able to come home and spend time with my husband. That's what works for me. Everybody picks what works for you. That's the way I found balance. I don't know. That's my work-life balance. I'm sure that's about to change a little more now. I haven't actually been in the office since having a baby, but I'm sure I'm about to have to make a little more adjustments to figure out how to make that work.
Great, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Gracie?
So I was dating a guy coming into law school, and frankly, he just didn't understand really what was going on. I mean, first year of law school was really a put your head down and get your work done and figure this law school thing out. And so that is just something to be aware of, like your family, significant other, spouses, they just need to understand what you're going through. I ended up meeting my now husband in law school though. And so he's a lawyer and an accountant, and he helps me with the work-life balance a lot. He's not in litigation, he's solely transactional. So their tax season's busy, but other than that, it's a pretty chill environment. So he helps with household stuff and all those things when I'm gearing up for trial. And I have a trial next week via Zoom, so I'm making him practice Zoom with me and exhibits. So it's really having somebody that just completely understands and wants to support you in that career. And I think the second piece of that is really who you work for. So people, when you look at firms, will tell you we have great work-life balance, and sometimes that's not true. So the people that I work for, I'm the only associate in my office. I have 6 partners that I answer to. So I have my own cases, and then I second chair many of their cases, but they are all very family oriented. They'll kick me out of the office if they think I'm there too late too often. And so I think that's a huge value added, just the people that you work for and them respecting that family and things like that come first.
Great. Okay, Lauren?
So during law school, I was probably better at work-life balance than I have been in practice. When I went into law school, I think a big thing for me was knowing my limitations, knowing that, especially that first quarter, I saw a lot of people who were, I mean, because it's a new environment, you're panicking, you're not sure how you're absorbing this information. I just knew when I would hit my wall studying. And at that point, I knew it was no longer beneficial for me to stay in the law library or to stay at school. And I would go home and play some Mario Kart or decompress somehow. I did work all through my 2L and 3L years while I was at Baylor. I think that helped a little bit, having a job that kind of made me separate my day between school, work, and I lived with my sister. So I got family time in at school and at home since I lived with her. She graduated a year behind me. Now it's gotten a little bit harder because I'm very deeply involved in my community and with bar leadership. And for me, I think the hard thing now is learning when to say no. I was better at saying no during law school because I was, concerned and I wanted to make sure that I did well. Now I tend to take on more things than I probably should. But I get a lot of joy out of the work that I do here at work and then the work that I do in the community and for the bar. So I'm trying to learn how to say no as I go along.
Great. Thank you, guys. Okay. Do y'all think, and you've kind of touched on this a little bit, do you think that Baylor Law prepared you for practice? If yes, how so? And if not, was there any way that you think that you could have been better prepared walking out into practice?
I've been practicing for 15, 16 years, and I can emphatically say yes to all the above. Baylor Law School generally, and specifically the practice court program, prepares you pretty much to hang a shingle if you wanted to when you graduate. You're going to learn some things along the way, but you have a confidence that I think other graduates from other schools don't necessarily have. I don't think you're as intimidated by judges in the courtroom, opposing counsel, getting a lawsuit filed. I just think that Baylor prepares you and instills that confidence in you. And to me, that's what sets it apart from just about every other law school I encountered.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm definitely the newest attorney of the group here, but I was pretty much thrown to the wolves when I got out. My firm had lost their associate and they really needed somebody that could go in and do their emergency relief and things like that. And so I don't think I could have done it without Baylor. And I think what Ryan said is very true. Part of it is just the confidence piece. I see some of my peers that are at the same level or further advanced in license, like they've been licensed longer than me and in family law, and they're still not going to trials on their own and things like that. And I think it's a lot to do with the confidence piece, the comfort, and just being able to feel prepared. My firm only was looking at Baylor for that reason. And I pretty much walked around law school scared 100% of the time, like scared of the professors, PC, doing something wrong. And so funny enough, never feel that way in real practice, which makes no sense because I'm actually dealing with real people's lives now. But I think it got me over that hump that that I needed to. So.
And actually, that leads me well into the next question. Can one or more of y'all talk about your experience with practice court? These admitted students and current students hear a lot about it, and it's kind of this mythical thing. So if y'all, we've explained what it is practically, but if y'all can maybe talk about your experience with that, yeah.
So my practice court experience, I mean, I tell everybody I talk to about Baylor Law, it's not easy, right? It's not an easy program. And I went into Baylor knowing that. It is a lot of reading. You're going to have a lot of late nights. Make sure you choose a great PC partner because that person is your ride or die through that program. I was very lucky. I had a great PC partner. Her and I still are in contact. And we were actually the first big trial for our year. For the admitted students that don't know, you have to do a big trial at the end of the year. We were the first ones to go, and I think Hal told us we were the first ones to win that case in about 10 years that he had seen on the plaintiff side. So we were really, really excited. And it turns out further on down the line, my current trial partner, who is also a Baylor lawyer, had this same big trial as I did. So we kind of bonded over that. But it is a lot of practical practice. And once you get out, you can roll into a courtroom and do a trial by yourself. And I don't think any other law school in the state or possibly even in the country can say that. My boss, when I started the DA's office, was exclusively hiring Baylor lawyers because he knew that he could put those kids into a courtroom by themselves because we did not have second or third chairs at that time in our county, and we could try a case, and he could count on us to try a case, and we had the confidence to do it. It is rough to go through. You're going to be nervous, but I promise you, if you come out the other side, it's definitely worth all the hard work and all the effort that you put in.
Anybody else want to talk about your practice court experience? Okay.
I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Do you stay engaged with the Baylor Law community? And also, how would you describe that community?
I can start. I definitely stay engaged with the Baylor Law community, especially in Austin. Years ago, I founded the Austin Baylor Network, which was sort of an alumni outreach program that I think Baylor in general was doing, and all of their schools across the board were doing, including the law school. And so every few months, we have a get together where professors will come from Baylor Law School and tell us what's happening with the law school. And it's a good way to stay connected. I also stay connected to most of my classmates from Baylor Law. And so the Baylor Law community is a very interesting one because they very much support each other. And a lot of times you will see, or at least I have in my practice, people from out of state or certainly out of town, calling and wanting the name of a quote Baylor lawyer, end quote, to help them do something. And so it's a close-knit group of people, even for those that don't even know each other. The term Baylor lawyer does mean something, and I think it's because of all the shared experiences that all these people have in law school and in practice court. They have confidence in all of their fellow Baylor lawyers.
Great. Anybody else?
I am currently involved with the Baylor Law community. I'm on the Austin Baylor Law Steering Committee for the alumni. So we help stay the Austin community connected, I guess, and plan happy hours and get-togethers. I also stay very plugged in with my classmates. The other interesting part that kind of goes off of Ryan is Baylor Law, they're very loyal to each other. And so there will be attorneys that I don't know where we'll have heard that an expert testified for them or against them, and we need to learn about that expert. So we'll call up random firms if we see a Baylor lawyer and ask to talk to them. And we've never been unsuccessful at that. They'll always talk to us, always give us the scoop. And so I think that's really unique compared to other law schools.
Yeah, I'm still pretty involved in the Baylor Law community. My class is still really close. In fact, we're planning a 10-year reunion next year to get together. But I deal a lot with Baylor lawyers in leadership, especially bar leadership. I'm on the Texas Young Lawyers Association board. And for being such a small school, we have a really large amount of Baylor lawyers on there. And the first one I met when I joined TYLA was Bailey Rhodes, who now works in College Station. She was the president of Texas Young Lawyers when I started. And she really and other Baylor lawyers on the board, including Andy Jones from Dallas. We all kind of build each other up. We get each other involved in leadership stuff. I'm also involved in the Texas District and County Attorneys Association, and we have a lot of really great Baylor prosecutors on that board, such as Kristen Burns out of College Station, Stephanie McGregor now at the AG's office. And they're just people who I can call up should I not know something, because you will never know anything in this everything in this profession. And so I'll call them up and be like, hey, I'm having an issue here. Have you all dealt with this? And kind of similar to Gracie, same thing. We have no problem sharing resources or helping each other out when it's an area of the law we're unfamiliar with, or when we have a question on how to do something.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, I was going to say, I also, just kind of like everybody on the call, I also try to stay involved. I'm on the Fort Worth Baylor Law Steering Committee, and I'll echo what everybody else said, that it's a smaller alumni base of lawyers than other law schools, just because Baylor is a smaller law school. And I think that makes people more loyal to each other. I think people typically stay in touch with their classmates better. I know I do. As someone else said, their practice court partner, that person is very important. My practice court partner was a bridesmaid at my wedding. I've actually been texting with her this morning about work issues. We both practice employment law now. I just think that Baylor is unique in that way, that people stay in touch with people they met at Baylor, people stay plugged into the Baylor law community, and people are very loyal to each other.
Great. Okay, switching gears a little bit. What has been the most surprising thing about the practice of law? And also, what is your favorite thing about being an attorney? Lauren, you want to go first?
Sure. Most surprising thing I think about practicing law once I got out, besides the fact that you have to constantly keep learning, because especially in the criminal area that's constantly changing, was the sense of camaraderie no matter what side you're on. Going into criminal, because I didn't have a lot of experience in criminal before I became a criminal law attorney, I was surprised that when I was a defense attorney, a lot of my best friends were prosecutors, and now that I'm on the other side, it's vice versa. I think that we can go in, we can be zealous advocates for our clients and who we're representing, and then at the end of the day, once the hearing's done, we can be friends, we can be colleagues, and we can share information. And I think that that's something that's kind of unique to the professional law, to have hearings sometimes be so contentious, but then once that hearing's done, you all are still colleagues and friends, and you can move on from that. And then what was the second question? Oh, my favorite thing about being a lawyer. I think my favorite thing, and that's why I went to Baylor, is trial. I am luckily in an area of the law where I get to try several cases a year. I think I had tried my first felony trial before my first year of practice was out. And I've been able to sit on some major cases, and there is no feeling. It's indescribable getting in front of a jury and arguing your case to that jury, and getting to do so every day and to represent the citizens of the county that I grew up in is the greatest honor of my life.
Awesome. Okay, Hannah, you want to go next?
Sure. It's hard to think what is the most surprising thing about the practice of law. I guess maybe for me, the fact that I didn't end up in the courtroom, at least for my practice, that surprised me. I didn't end up in the courtroom all the time like I imagined. I end up now doing a lot of writing, a lot of phone calls, a lot of research, things like that. But I surprisingly also found that I like that. And that kind of segues into what I find most enjoyable, is sort of maybe what I find surprisingly enjoyable. I actually really enjoy that a large part of my practice is client counseling. I really enjoy helping clients figure out how to do the right thing, especially because in doing employment law, most of my clients are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to treat their employees right. They're trying to run their business and make a profit. and I enjoy helping them do that.
Great. Okay, Gracie?
So I think the thing that most surprised me is probably the judges. I think I assumed going into practice that they were going to be scary, mean, ready for you to fail, looking for you to fail. I don't know why I thought that, and that's totally the opposite experience that I've had. Don't get me wrong, there are still some judges that like a good yell and things like that, but for the most part, they're very accommodating. They are very kind, and they're just there to be a public servant and to do right by the community. And I've enjoyed watching that aspect. As far as my favorite part of practice, I am in an area of law where I probably spend 50% of my time acting as a lawyer and 50% of my time acting as a therapist. So it's just the people I'm interacting with. It's probably one of the most difficult things in their life, definitely something they weren't expecting to have to do and go through. So I enjoy being able to help rehabilitate people and find a new normal for their lives and for their kids, and try to keep conflict down while doing that, although we're not always successful. But I've really enjoyed that part of practice. It feels like, you know, we're making a difference in these people's lives.
Great. Okay, Ryan?
Well, I'm going to start with the most enjoyable part of practice because I think it dovetails into the most surprising part of practice. Without question, for me, the most enjoyable part of my practice is getting to go to trial. The reason I say it dovetails into the most surprising part is when you go to Baylor and you're around all these trial lawyers and these awesome professors and you're gearing up to go through practice court and graduate, you know, you have this confidence coming out of law school that you're going to go try a bunch of cases. And then you get into the practice and you realize trials are few and far between most of the time. And so it sort of surprised me just how few cases actually went to trial. And I think it differs with respect to what type of law you're practicing. You'll get more in certain areas than others. It also can vary depending on the size of your firm and the kind of cases you're dealing with. But that surprised me, and I had to make a conscious decision to really work hard at getting the number of trials that I wanted to get. And when I graduated, I told myself I was going to try at least one case to a jury every single year. And I've been able to do that for 15 or 16 years, but I had to work at it. And sometimes I had to, you know, take on a small pro bono case if that's what was going to go to trial. To me, that was surprising. And to me, it's the most valuable thing you can do, or one of them, is take your cases to trial, because it allows you to look back on how you worked up the case. It allows you to learn something every single time about what you can do better the next time. And it's sort of a shame that we have this sort of vanishing jury system, because I just think that, you know, there ought to be a way for people not to have to make economic decisions in order to get their case heard, but that's the way it is, and that's just what we've got to deal with.
Great. Okay, so my last question here for all of you guys, if you could offer one piece of advice to incoming law students, or if there's one thing you wish you could have known or that you would have told yourself as you were entering law school, what would it be? Whoever wants to go first.
I can start. This is easier said than done, and I'm sure people told me this as I entered law school and I could not do it, but I think that I would tell them to relax. I went into my first quarter of law school, and I mean, I have tons of student debt. I had to take out loans for my living expenses. And so that, I think, really made it real to me that I really needed to succeed to be able to get a good job, to pay off my student loans. And so I think that there are pieces of law school that I could have enjoyed that I didn't, because I was so type A, so wound up, concerned about being successful, that I kind of missed out on some of the experience. And my husband's the exact opposite of me. So he just like floated through, had a good time, and we're sitting in the same place now. And so I know that it's possible. Again, easier said than done, but I think that's what I would have told myself going in.
I can go. Can you hear me? Okay. If I were to give somebody some advice about, that's going to be going into law school, it somewhat echoes what Gracie said. It's not exactly relax, but a lot of times what you see in that first year of law school and even through second year is the law students are coming together from all sorts of different universities. They're all sort of the cream of the crop of their various universities. And now they're competing against other people that are sort of the cream of the crop of their universities. And there is sometimes a level of competition that may not be that healthy. And you're worried about, beating your neighbor on this test or doing better on this. And healthy competition is good, but unhealthy competition is not good. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that this is 3 years of their life, and probably 100% of their graduating class is going to end up practicing law. Maybe not all in the same state or city or firm, but everybody's going to be practicing, and all of your fellow classmates are going to remember you and how you acted during those 3 years. And so for me, it's be nice, be a good neighbor, relax a little, don't be too competitive, and recognize that all of these classmates are going to be your colleagues and referral sources one day, and treat them as such.
Piggybacking on that, I have a lot of the same thoughts that I remember the first year being a highly anxious, highly competitive time. If I could go back, I would probably try to tell myself to take care of myself a little more, try to not be so wound up, make time to work out, make time to mentally take care of myself, whatever that needs to be, and just have faith and realize and kind of step back and come to the realization that you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. Very, very likely 95% chance, or maybe even greater, you're going to be practicing law. It's going to be okay. So just take a deep breath and try not to be so wound up.
Yeah, I pretty much echo what everybody else said. Relax, take a breath, make sure you enjoy the experience while you're going through it. I know sometimes it may not seem enjoyable because of the amount of work that you're going to be doing. But you have a really unique opportunity in going to law school that a lot of other people don't get. Try different things, try different classes, different areas of law you maybe wouldn't look at, because you never know where you're going to end up, where your passion's going to lie. And the same things with the friends that you make. Make sure that you meet people from different backgrounds. You're going to have that opportunity at law school, and make sure you're kind to your colleagues, because even in law school, you see it more now practicing, but that's your network. You're starting to develop your network of friends and of colleagues, and you want to make sure that you're representing yourself well during that time, that you have good character, that you're helping out. And people remember that when they come out. They remember what their experience in law school was like. And especially when you go to Baylor, because your class size is so small, y'all are going to have that camaraderie, and you're going to have that shared experience. And you want to make sure that you have very, very deep ties, no matter what area of law you're going to practice once you get out.
Great. Well, thank y'all so much for all of your advice and wisdom and insights. We appreciate it.